Hey guys, my name is Jay Brody. I'm here with SteamFirst.com, and today we're going to be talking about lag versus frame rate dips, because you often hear the two terms used interchangeably, but they're not. So today we're going to learn about what they are, what they aren't, and where they're different, stuff like that. So let's get to it. So when someone says lag, there are actually two kinds of lags that come into play. There's input lag and networking lag. Input lag occurs from the time you hit a key to the time the change is made on your screen. You don't often hear about input lag because it's a problem that mainly results from too old hardware running too new software or a system with lots of connections. In the first scenario, the graphics processor processes so slowly that you actually notice the delay. And of course, there's always going to be a delay because no hardware is instant, but in some cases, it's so bad that you can actually notice it. Now, for anyone who can, try playing Battlefield 4 on an Xbox 360 and you'll see what I mean. There is so much input lag that it's actually just not fun to play. I mean, it's so bad that it will actually render your reaction speeds almost entirely useless because by the time you shoot back, the other person has already put 12 rounds into you. In the second scenario of input lag, there are too many hoops through which the input or output must go. The reason you should never use a long HDMI cable for gaming consoles is because the input lag is so significant because HDMI is not that fast. Some games such as Guitar Hero have features for you to deal with these, but others, such as Call of Duty, do not. Always try to minimize the number of interfaces and cords between yourself, your computer, and your display. Also, vertical sync or VSync can increase input delay, but we'll talk about that one in another video. The second scenario, networking lag, is one of the most annoying in gaming, and it is all your fault. Kind of. Networking lag results from an internet connection that is too slow to handle all the data going out and all the data coming in. We call this ping and measure it in milliseconds. The lower the ping, the lower the number of milliseconds, the less rubber banding you get. And rubber banding is basically the thing that happens where you just get stuck in space, or you're, running forever in the same place. Somewhere, the player, yours probably, can't send out enough data to the game server, so that player, or you, is waiting for updated input. Dips in frame rate are also very annoying, but are totally different than lag. The frame rate of a game is, wait for it, the rate at which frames are displayed in a game. What? You probably know that videos are just a bunch of pictures slide back to back and played really fast. Well, in gaming, the console actually determines the frame rate of the video. Now, why does this matter? Well, because the higher the frame rate, the smoother the experience is. Now, let's think about movies. It's pretty hard to read moving text in a movie, right? That's because the standard frame rate for a movie is 24 frames per second. Well, technically it's 25, but we're just going to simplify it and talk about 24. And while that may sound like a lot, it really isn't. In fact, you've been watching me at 30 frames per second. Now watch as I drop it down to 24 frames a second. Now, do you see how much more stutter there is in my movement? Look at this video of my hand waving. If I stop and show each individual frame, you'll notice a lot of blurring around the edges. That's because the hand moved while the camera was still capturing the frame, so only a fraction of the intended exposure actually included the hand there, resulting in a kind of ghost effect. Our eyes also have motion blur, which is why a 24 frames per second camera clip looks natural all by itself. It looks kind of like what our eyes are used to seeing. Of course, a higher frame rate is better still, but you get the point. Games don't have motion blurring, so the lower the frame rate, the much more stuttery it's going to look because there's no motion blur that kind of blends each frame together. It just starts to look like what it really is, which is just a picture, a picture, a picture, a picture. So games often target 60 frames per second. It's clear and maxes out the performance on most monitors, although you can buy some gaming grade monitors that show higher frame rates if your computer can handle it. That's why games target 60 frames per second. Now, whenever your frame rate drops, you're probably going to notice it, and it's probably going to look pretty bad. I know on my computer, smoke in Battlefield 4 is just so intensive that this frame rate sometimes halves itself, which looks pretty bad going from 60 to 30. Now that's one of the big advantages for having a PC for gaming. I might be able to only run a game at 30 frames per second right now in max video settings, but later down the road, if I upgrade, I'll be able to run it at 60 frames per second, which looks much better. Consoles, however, are stuck at what the developers gave them. So, if you like the game you have, you can't play it at anything above what they got. For example, The Last of Us. Really hard for me to play on the PS3 because it was 30 frames per second. However, you get the occasional awesome developer who comes along and remakes one of their great games at 60 frames per second. Thank you so much. There is a sort of crossroads here. Sometimes input lag can actually be introduced by a lower frame rate. That's because the longer the GPU has to spend on the frame, the more time passes before it renders the next frame with the latest input changes. So the faster the GPU can go through the frames, and thus the higher the frame rate, the lower the input lag can be, which is why some gamers opt for a frame rate higher than their monitor can display. Even if it doesn't show all of them on screen, it's going to bring the response time up and input lag down. So, that's it guys. If the picture is choppy, it's a frame rate issue. If things are slow and don't move right, it's lag. So, that's it. That's the end. Yay! See you later, guys.